Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Riveters CAD Training Lesson 13. Assembly creation for a wheel assembly. This is what we're going to be making. It's got a fair number of parts in it. So let's jump to Autodesk, Inventor, and create an assembly. We'll save it as DWG2 wheel assembly. It's gonna yell at me right now because I could not find one of the parts I was trying to put in. So let's turn on the planes. So when we put the first part in, it's aligned to planes. It's one of my my preferences. So place, DWG axle, open. I'm going to come in here and click axle. Hit escape. That axle does not look right. I'm going to go back to the other axle. And go back to the original DWG axle. There we go. That looks good. Left click place, escape. Come in and turn the planes on by hitting Control, right click, visibility. So can I ask me if I want to check it out? And I'm going to say yes. Now what I'm going to do is come into Assembly, Constraint. I'm going to basically flush the two center planes, then mate the XY to XY, and then mate the XZ to XZ. The reason for this is now it's won't move around. So let's go in and add some parts. We're going to add in, we're going to place. We're going to need some spacers, axle spacers. So let's take the long spacer. Let's put 2 of those in. Hit escape. I'm going to place a short spacer. Going to come in and place the wheel bearing. There's 2 of those. And I'm going to place the wheel. And this is the starting pieces. We're also going to add hubs later. However, let's not add too many parts at one time. All right, so the next thing is to go through and align the axles. So I'm going to click on the outer of the bearing. I'm going to click on to the axle, and it's going to jump. I'm going to apply. When you have the outer race, you'll see when you have the right surface, you'll see the axes in the center of the part light up. I'm going to come over here, click the center of the wheel, add that. Okay, so if you say cancel and hit escape, first thing, let's clean this up so we're not looking at the planes. So first thing you do is Control, touch on all 3, right click, visibility, turn those off. Life gets a little easier. If you hit escape and you can grab individual components, and the trick is if you click it really quickly, what it will do is we'll jump into edit that part. But if you click it and hold it, it will hold position. So we probably need to, in fact I just did that, click the wheel, pull that out of the way, click off, pull the bearing out of the way, click off, click the axle, pull out of the way. Okay, so now the inside edge of the chassis is on this face. There's a keeper plate that goes into here. So this spacer needs to bump up against this face. So what I'm going to do is I say constraint, and I'm going to flush it in between this face and the face of the long axle and the face of the axle spacer, long axle spacer, and the face of the interface of the groove on the axle. I'm going to apply that, and then I'm going to do a make command in between the face of the bearing and the face of the long axle spacer. Apply that. Then I'm going to come in and touch the shoulder on the bearing and go into the bearing pocket, and now we'll see the wheel jump. And then there's a bearing in here, but you notice the orientation on the bearing isn't the right direction. However, that will fix itself when we make this, and we'll jump into the right position. So now we've basically got the wheel in. In fact, if you grab this wheel, it will turn. And we're missing hubs. So let's hubs, and we're going to need another bearing for the outside. So let's go into Vault and Place. And it's 42 tooth hub. So 40 tooth. Let's do the outers first. And the orientation is on these are a little bit askew. Now let me get three. There's 3 inner hubs. 1, 2, 3. And then let's also place another wheel bearing. All right, so basically the same procedure as before. Let's go through and align the axes to the axes of the individual components to the axes of the axle. All right, so all those components are in. Next, I'm going to hit escape, and I'm up. I thought I did a long click on that. And I'm going to turn and move these so these pins align. Okay, so let's go through and do some alignment on the pins. And the obvious ones right now are to come through and touch on these and align these as we go across, because they're generally in line right now. When we look at this pin goes into this hole over here, so let's align that pin to that hole. And the whole thing just jumped. And then now this pin goes into this hole right here when this flips. Okay, so now we have all of those components basically aligned. Let's come back and do mate in between the face. Now I know there's members of the team who like to use the join command. I'm a little bit preferential to this. I know it takes a little bit longer, but if a constraint breaks, you're only breaking 1 of 3. And generally things stay in place. Really doesn't take that much longer. So now we have a hub. That's generally, now we need to align the hub to, so let me escape, come in and grab this and pull this in tighter. Now you'll see the hole, there's this hole here, and there's the post, and there's a hole next to the post. This boss that sticks out. So we're going to align this hole to I lost it. There we go. Sometimes you have to zoom in and back, zoom in and out to get a decent. So now we just applied, and these should be aligned, and that post will slip into that slot. And now let's mate in between, or flush, not flush, mate in between the face of the hub and the pulley. Oh, look at that. All right, now the bearing face needs to go into the face of the hub. And it's best if we at this point escape, grab the axle spacer and move it out. And add a constraint into the face of the bearing and the axle spacer. Grab from the face of the long axle spacer to the short axle spacer. Hang on, let me set this back to where it was. I used a part that was when I was prepping for this and running through the PowerPoint. I changed this, so I'm going to update this. So from this face, so this has to sit in between the two square tubes. So from the face of this square tube, so we're now going to do something new. We haven't done this before. This is inspect distance, and we're going to zoom in. This face should be flush with the interface of the chassis, and this bearing should be that face should be on the other side of the chassis, and in, from tube to tube is 4 inches, and we're 4.118, so we're not going to fit. We could pull this out, but then we're going to have probably 3/8 of an inch of a gap. So right click onto this spacer, come in, hit extrusion. We're going to change it from 1/4 to 1/8. And let's take that and check that in. Now we're going to jump back. And if you look, oh, hey, what's up? Why is it doing that? There's a gap in there. That's because the model updated, but it hasn't been refreshed. So if you do a local update, you'll see that jump back. Now let's measure again from that outer face of the spacer, the face on the axle, and we got 3.993, 7 thousandths. That might be a tad tight. However, for what we're doing right now, this is pretty good. So let's come in and say save. Yes to all. Okay. And then vault check-in. And now we've created the axle subassembly. All right. Congratulations.